All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful idea that's kind of bubbling up and challenging how we think about the internet. It's this concept called unpermissioned, and it's basically a whole new blueprint for how we could build, create, and just connect online. So let's get right into it.
Just think about your day-to-day life on the web for a second. Doesn't it feel like you're constantly knocking on doors? Like you're always asking for permission to get in? You've got this great idea for an app or some content you want to share, or maybe a new service you're ready to build. But first, you need the green light from an app store. You need permission from a huge social media platform. You have to play by the rules of some central authority. It feels like every single step requires a key from a gatekeeper, right? But here's the thing, it wasn't always this way. And a lot of people are starting to argue that it doesn't have to be this way either.
So how in the world did we get here? How did this wide-open, kind of Wild West frontier of the early internet turn into a bunch of gated communities? Well, we found ourselves living in what a lot of people call the internet's walled gardens. And to figure out where we're going, we have to understand that reality first. You see, the early World Wide Web was built on this amazing promise of openness. It was a true digital commons. The barriers to entry were super low. If you knew a little code, you could publish a website or build a service on its open protocols. Anyone could play. But today's reality, it's just completely different. It's dominated by a handful of giant platforms that control who gets in, what you see, and at the end of the day, they set all the rules. Okay, so that's the problem. But what if there was a different way? A totally different way to build our digital world? And that question, that brings us to the real heart of this whole thing, an alternative philosophy for a world that's designed without permission.
So what in the world are unpermissioned systems? Well, to put it simply, these are systems that are built from the ground up to need as few gatekeepers as possible. The whole goal is to let anyone participate, not just to read or consume, but to write and create, without needing to ask for permission first. It's a huge shift from the web we're all used to.
I love this quote because it just nails the whole concept perfectly. No bouncers. Coordination must be self-organizing. Just picture a club or a party with no one at the door checking a list. The people inside have to figure out for themselves how to interact, how to make it all work. That right there, that's the core idea of an unpermissioned system.
Now, that sounds great in theory, maybe a little chaotic, right? But how does it actually work? How do you build a system that's open to literally everyone without it just falling apart? Well, let's dig into the core principles.
So the really crucial difference here is the move from centralized control to a decentralized network. Think about it. A centralized system has one single point of failure and rules that come from the top down. If that central point goes down or decides to change the rules, well, everyone is affected. But a decentralized network, it spreads control out. This makes it way more resilient and lets people coordinate directly with each other, peer-to-peer. There's no single off switch. This really breaks down the DNA of what makes these ecosystems tick. First up, you've got open access. It's like treating the system like a public park that's always open for everyone. Then there's censorship resistance, which is actually built into the bones of the infrastructure itself, almost like a digital civil liberty. Next, and this one's a bit of a mindbender, is the trustless design. Now, that doesn't mean there's no trust. It means we move the trust away from people or companies who can make mistakes and put it into transparent, verifiable code. And finally, you have barrier-free entry. It's like an open workshop with benches just waiting for anyone to come along and start building something new.
Okay, to make this a little less abstract, let's talk about something you've probably heard of, public blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum. They are perfect examples of this whole idea in action. You can think of them as a shared public memory or a collective ledger that anyone can see and add to. But, and this is the key, no single person or company can go back and change it or control it. It creates this system of collective bookkeeping where the network itself enforces the rules, not some central banker who's calling all the shots.
Now, this radical openness, it's not some magic fix for everything. It actually comes with its own set of really tough challenges. You know, every freedom has a trade-off, and it is absolutely crucial that we understand the price of being unpermissioned.
This openness creates some serious trade-offs. On one hand, you have the promise of incredibly rapid, almost explosive experimentation. But on the other hand, that comes with the very real peril of uneven quality and, yes, a lot of scams. You have the ideal of uncensorable free expression, but that's countered by the huge challenge of how to deal with harmful content when there's no central moderator. And yeah, governance power shifts to the users, which sounds great, but it can also make changing policies way slower and riskier. So getting rid of the gatekeeper doesn't get rid of the problems, it just changes what those problems look like.
This little phrase, it just perfectly captures that core trade-off. Read/write equals agency plus responsibility. When you give everyone the ability to both read and write to a system, you're giving them agency, real power. But you're also handing them the responsibility for what happens next. Suddenly, you're part of the system's governance.
So where does this all leave us? Well, this isn't a finished product, not by a long shot. It's very much an ongoing experiment. You could even call it an unfinished revolution. And the real challenge for the future is figuring out how to balance its incredible promise with all of its built-in dangers.
But the guiding philosophy behind it all remains so powerful. It's about a fundamental reset in how we think about building things. Instead of starting with gates and guards and asking who should get a key, it starts with an open door. It privileges access by default, and you only add barriers when it's absolutely undeniably necessary.
Which of course leaves us with this final massive question. The early web was a kind of digital commons. Now, as we try to build the next version of that commons, how do we get all the benefits of that openness, the innovation, the freedom, without accidentally just building the exact same gates we're trying so hard to tear down? That right there is the challenge for the next chapter of the internet.